Truck drivers, what's a creepy story you've got from the middle of nowhere? I used to deliver hotshot freight across the Great Plains, Minnesota area. One night around 2 a.m., I was hauling across North Dakota trying to reach Montana by morning. I was delivering a particularly valuable tractor part that a farm desperately needed for the following day. I began to notice some highway hypnosis sneaking up on me, but it didn't really bother me because I'd been through it hundreds of times before. Anyone who has driven across North Dakota knows that it is incredibly flat. Like, really flat. There also tends to be very straight and long roads. It's somewhat easy to see things on the road that are far away, even at night. I noticed something long on the road, spanning my entire lane, approximately half a mile in front of me. I slowed down a little and prepared to move into the opposite lane, thinking it was some retread off a blown tire. As I got closer, I noticed it was two people, laying head to toe across the entire lane. I swerved into the other lane, successfully avoiding them, and came to an almost complete stop. But they didn't move, not an inch. I was just about to back up and check on them when I remembered a story that an old greybeard colleague of mine told me. He told me that in certain remote areas, people will lie down in the middle of the road and wait for a car or truck to stop and see what's going on. At that point, the road layers, along with whoever else is hiding in the nearby bushes, will beat the shit out of the driver and steal his vehicle, leaving him in the middle of nowhere. I decided not to back up, and when the two people in the road saw me put my truck back in gear and drive away, they both got up and walked toward the shoulder. I called the police and explained what happened, but we were so far away from civilization that I doubt anything came of it. Thanks to that old greybeard, I got to keep my truck, my job, and my teeth.
Around 2006-ish, I was driving flatbed, picked up a load of construction material. Drywall, roofing, don't remember, but it was pre-packaged in boxes, and I remember having to use strap protectors on the load. In rural Tennessee. Memory is foggy now, but I want to say it was between Memphis and Nashville, but closer to the intersection of the Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee state lines. Tarp required, so I strapped everything down, tarped the load, and left the shipper. About 5 miles down the road, in the middle of nowhere woods on a 2-lane road, I noticed my tarp flapping in the wind. Found a wide shoulder and pulled over to fix it. I realized that I just flat did a shitty job tarping this load and decided to redo it on the side of the road. Undo all the bungee straps, drag the tarps off, roll them back up, climb up on the load and start unrolling the tarps again, and I see a guy walking down the same side of the road I'm on, coming towards my truck. I don't think anything about it other than to keep an eye on him because I'm in the middle of nowhere and continue what I'm doing. About the time I have tarps set in place and am climbing down to start hooking the bungee straps back on, this dude is getting close enough that I'm now paying more attention to him than I am to tarping my load. I grab my winch bar and set it on the trailer where I'm working just in case. 8-pound solid metal bar about 4 feet long, tapered to a blunt point on one and hollow on the other, used for tightening straps and chains, etc. The guy gets to me and the first thing I notice is his hair. It's like a mullet, but it's patchy as fuck. Like he tried to cut his own hair and had a seizure in the process and said, "Fuck it, good enough to party." The next thing I noticed were his eyes, which I can only describe as off. Like they were clear, I didn't think he was drunk or high or anything, but it also gave me the distinct impression that the elevator didn't go all the way up. Clothes were dirty and not well maintained, with dirty white tennis shoes, because I remember he didn't have laces on one shoe and the tongue was noticeably out of place. He stops by me, waits until I acknowledge him and just says, "I've got a long walk." I'm like, "Yeah, man, you do. We're in the middle of nowhere." Making it clear there's no ride to be had here. He nods, starts walking by me, continuing on his way, stops at about the driver door on my truck and turns around, comes back to me and repeats himself. "I've got a long walk." At this point, I explain that I can't give him a ride, insurance, and all that. Apologize for not being able to help him out, and he seems to accept this, turns around and leaves. I wait for him to get a little ways away from my truck and start working on finishing the tarp job. I still keep an eye on him and he's moving away from me. As I'm putting on the last of the bungee straps, I look over to check where he's at, and he's turned around heading back towards me, now about 100 yards in front of my truck and coming back my way. It looks like he's talking on a cell phone, has his hand up to his face, and I can barely make out his mouth moving, his other hand waving like he's having a conversation with someone. I finish with the straps, grab my winch bar, and am climbing into my truck as he's about 10 yards away now. Soon as I'm in the cab, I lock the doors and set the winch bar on the passenger seat just in case. I look at the guy and realize he's not talking on a phone. He's talking to his fucking hand, and now I'm nervous, because he doesn't look like he's having a nice, pleasant chat. It looks more like an angry conversation. Crank the truck up, put it in gear, and just pull out. Didn't look for traffic or anything. As I pass him, he's just looking at me, still holding his hand to his face with this dead-ass look on his face, just staring at me. Gave me the creeps. About the time I hit 5th or 6th gear, I look in the mirror and there's no one there.
I used to drive truck in northern Manitoba. There's a road in the northeast you can drive for several hours and see very few vehicles. This road is quite flat and straight in stretches. Of course, this is deep in the bush. One day I saw something cross the road in the distance. Very large, easily past the hood on my truck. But not long, like a moose or elk, just tall. It disappeared into the bush, and as I drove by the spot, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I heard days later a tow truck driver describing on the radio his encounter with a similar creature, only he was much more clear he had spotted Bigfoot. This guy went to some length to explain he didn't want people thinking he was crazy, but he was sure what he saw. I asked an Aboriginal client of mine in a nearby community, and he said the elders spoke of them as commonly the same way they spoke of the other animals. I don't know what I saw that day, but I'm certain it wasn't a bear, moose, deer, or elk. I just don't know what the hell it was.